A cynic can be described as someone who doesn't hold out hope that anything in the future will be good, and frankly I find it harder and harder to understand why any gamer wouldn't be a cynic at this point. Films starring Morgan Freeman would have you believe that hope is your magical shield against the tribulations of life, but the games industry has collectively taken that shield and shoved it up our arse so many times it's probably time we started leaving it at home. To put it in another, less stupid way, if you go by the evidence of the last 10 years and just assume that the new Sonic the Hedgehog is just going to be the usual punnet of snots, then you won't get your heart re-broken. So an appropriately mediocre E3 has a limped past for this mediocre year in gaming. Nintendo have proudly announced their intention to make the Wii do what it was always supposed to do anyway, while Microsoft and Sony busily compete to see who can rip off each other's consoles the most. And of course a gaggle of upcoming game trailers were wheeled out to stir up excitement, but since the eventual quality of most games is going to be essentially determined by spinning a roulette wheel where numbers 1 through 30 have all been smeared with pus, I thought I'd better fly in and point out that we're still living in a cruel corporate-run society that treats you like a wallet mounted on the back of an entranced magpie. So here's why all ye should abandon hope for the shiny objects being held up for us to gawp at. First up, Prince of Persia. Now, I thought the Sands of Time trilogy was the best game series of the last console generation. I'll pause for a moment so you can all go find your socks that just blew off. Okay, so the combat in Game 1 was a basket of farts, and Game 2 stumbled a bit when the prince went off his angst medication, but overall the characters were solid and the time-controlling gameplay worked crazy well with the sudden death platforming, to the point that now I feel my fingers unconsciously groping for the rewind button every time my toast lands butter side down. And it seems the new Prince of Persia is going to take all that and piss boiling oil into its eye sockets. Leaving aside for now that the music in the background sounds like someone teased a cat's bollocks with pliers for a few minutes while throwing ball bearings at a piano keyboard, the setting seems to have shifted from historical Persia to somewhere between Final Fantasy X and 12, and by the look of the character design, the concept artist's been spending more than a few holidays there himself. Maybe Prince of Persia's appeal lies in a grounding of reality dusted with the fantastic elements of Arabian myth, but fuck that, the kids are into anime these days, let's all jump around on the ceiling dressed like twats. Speaking of which, Final Fantasy XIII also has a trailer and it looks good. Of course it always looks good, but my philosophy with game trailers is that footage of pre-rendered cinematics doesn't count, so bearing that in mind, the actual length of the FF13 trailer is around 0.3 of a second. The rest consists of androgynous 12-year-olds running around being improbably awesome and giving absolutely no hints as to the storyline, but as an educated guess I'd say it involves some kind of evil authority, one or more heroes who were once associated with same, a half-baked anti-industrial hippie subtext, and all in all will closely resemble what you'd get if George Lucas's brain fell out and he made a new Star Wars movie with everything that was ever good about it replaced with dodgy CG and laughable angst. Oh wait. The new Resident Evil 5 footage indicates that Capcom are counteracting the accusations of racism by including an African female sidekick resembling a white woman who's been dipped in tea. I'm sure the gameplay will be fine because Resident Evil 4 was fine and bugger all seems to have changed, except now we've traded up from infected Spanish peasant village to infected African peasant village, and the dialogue is still going to be so bad that every single line hurls you out of the experience like you're on a fucking trebuchet. Now then, Fallout 3. Those of you who are paying attention will no doubt notice that all these games are sequels, and for those of you who aren't paying attention, oi! E3 was very much sequel boulevard this year, which might be partly why it was such a damp squib. What, is there some kind of virus that attacks creativity going around or something? 20 years ago, in the 8-bit era, games could be about French chefs riding giant stick insects while wielding a gun that shoots velociraptors. These days, a game's considered original if the gritty, well-armoured soldier protagonist has a moustache. Anyway, to rope this wandering steer back on topic, Fallout 3 is an RPG about a gritty, well-armoured soldier protagonist exploring a ruined city where everyone's either a mutant or a jerk. I'll admit that it looks very pretty, but then so did Rudolph Hess. Also, it's by Bethesda, developers of Oblivion and patron saints of games that look awesome in screenshots and preview videos but ultimately play like bowls of scummy dishwater. Case in point is the demonstrated combat system where the game cuts to a dramatic angle to watch you execute a successful kill, which is groovy pants the first time, but since it seems to happen with every kill, I'm sure repetition will swiftly boil it down to just plain pants. Finally, a brief mention of Gears of War 2. That was it. So that concludes this little adventure in sports spoiling. I'd like to clarify that somewhere in the flinty pits of my petrified heart I'm open to the possibility of all these games potentially being fun, except Final Fantasy XIII obviously, but my intention is not to troll for once, but to argue that it makes the most logical sense to be pessimistic. After all, if the game's good, great, but if it's bad, you've lost nothing. Plus you get the satisfaction of knowing you're cleverer than fanboys, which is right up there with winning a beauty contest against Steve Buscemi, but still, it's a good overall rule. Never let yourself get excited by trailers, unless it's the new one for the Watchmen movie. Oh yes, I can never get enough big glowing blue men with their celestial lads hanging out. As my father once said, never trust any trade convention that's named after an enzyme in the pyruvate dehydrogenase complex, so I'm always wary about E3. Hype is a device invented by mean-spirited marketing executives who never discover the true meaning of Christmas, and I said last year how it makes the most logical sense to be pessimistic, so allow me to get right into it and explain why everything that was hyped at E3 2009 will definitely fail and be incredibly depressing and probably make you start cutting again. You're welcome. Project Natal. I know they pronounced it Natal, but I'm going to keep calling it Natal because that's what it looks like, and it's a really fucking creepy image. The only thing creepier would be a grown woman flirting with a dead-eyed CG 10-year-old while Peter Molyneux stands in the background gushing about it. It may be an amazing bit of technology, but all these motion sensor concepts have to eventually face the fact that people play games to unwind, and no one unwinds by coming home and waving their arms about like an air traffic controller covered in beetles. Oh sure, you'll get a few sales from the gimmick crowd, but it's like selling shiny objects to magpies. Everything's fine until the moment someone invents a slightly shinier object, and then you're left crawling back to the core fan base you spent the last few years totally blowing off. Speaking of which, that brings me to Nintendo! Oh, hello again, Nintendo. I almost didn't recognize you with all that casual gamer semen crusting around your mouth. What's that? 4 new Mario games? Oh, what's the matter? Your cool new mainstream friends starting to get bored, and you somehow remembered that you're a video game company, not Fisher-Price. Anyway, I'm very disappointed in you. As I said in my Super Mario Galaxy review, it'd be hard to find new territory after going into space, but now it seems like you're just not even gonna fucking try. Super Mario Galaxy 2, the expansion pack that walks like a sequel. Presumably we'll have to wait a bit longer for Super Mario Space-Time Continuum, but in the meantime we can also play a new 2D Mario Brothers with multiplayer support, so now the Wii can annoy up to 4 people at the same time for maximum efficiency. Oh yes, and some hints were dropped concerning a new Zelda. Oh, you coy little bitch. I look forward to discovering whether we get the grappling hook or the boomerang first this time. Sony and Microsoft continue their endless one-upmanship with Sony's own motion sensor baby toy that's even creepier than Peter Molyneux's enthusiasm, the iPet. It's the face, I think. It's just a little bit too human. It's like they dressed one of the Rice Krispie elves in a monkey suit and withheld food until he debased himself for our entertainment. But that aside, Sony's all about the exclusive titles. Metal Gear Solid Rising, the latest in the Undead franchise that not even Hideo Kojima's writing can kill. And I've got to say he's outdone himself this time because a lot of his games bore me, but this is the first one that's bored me before it even came out. The Last Guardian by Team Ico is slightly more interesting in that it seems they've just made Ico again, but replaced escorting a recent concussion victim with tearing shit up on a giant monster, which is definitely a positive step. But do bear in mind that the monster in question is far too lovable to survive to the end of a Team Ico game. Quite a few third-party games to get through now, so let's keep it snappy. Assassin's Creed 2! A while ago, the idea got around that Assassin's Creed 2 would be set in the future, like what Assassin's Creed 1 was foreshadowing, but it seems Ubisoft feel that too much innovation all in one go will cause people's heads to explode. So we've instead moved from ancient history to slightly less ancient history. Thank God for that, I was almost getting interested. Uncharted 2, Among Thieves. We certainly are among thieves. Thieves of Tomb Raider, thieves of Indiana Jones. Oh snap! In all seriousness, there's multiplayer now, and the possibility of having to put up with more than one wisecracking Nathan Drake is officially my new vision of hell. Beatles Rock Band. Now that's what I call redundant. It's like saying Badger Mammal, or Inspector Morse Detective, or Harmonix Obvious Cash-In. Alan Wake. Ironically, waking will be the exact opposite of what this game will make you do. Sonic All-Stars Racing. First thought, why the fuck does Sonic the Hedgehog need a car? Second thought, why the fuck does Sonic the Hedgehog need to still exist? Final Fantasy XIV. I feel that anything I could say would be repeating myself, so I'm just going to express my feelings with a strangled noise from the back of my throat. Halo Reach, as in, if anyone thinks a new Halo game would be the slightest bit worth a damn, that certainly would be a reach. Bayonetta, more like, hey yo better not play this game, oh fuck you. Silent Hill Shattered Memories. Oh right, so it's a whole new interpretation of the concept with retooled gameplay and an emphasis on psychological horror. Actually, that sounds pretty good, but I'm committed to this idea now, so it's probably going to be bad. Why? Because people are shit. Whenever I'm in a crowd, I think to myself, who left this shit all over the place? I'm shit, you're shit, the world is shit. And if you're sitting there thinking, yes, it's true, everyone is shit except me, then you're a double bacon shit with large fries, Mr. Shitface. Sorry, this reflects badly on me, doesn't it? I should have said Mr. or Mrs. Shitface. The operator of a coin-operated artillery cannon might sarcastically yell to a retreating army, you should never be afraid of change. The youthful medium of gaming has grown out of the processor power arms race that took up most of its childhood and has finally begun shaving its bum fluff and touching itself at night as it enters an awkward puberty. There will be a lot of changes to come and you shouldn't fear them. You should resist them though. You've got to dig your heels in and show these changes who's the bitch before everything we've worked for all these years sells itself wholesale to the kinds of bejeweled playing child-having twat mackerels who've spent the last 2 decades nodding meaningfully to each other every time a Sega Genesis is found in the home of a murderer. Regular viewers will know that whenever E3 rolls around, they like to devote a video to discouraging people from getting too excited, but this year it almost feels like turning a fire hose on a cigarette butt. If gaming is going through puberty, then motion controls are its first period. It's become clear to me now that motion controls are something each game company just needs to get out of their system. Nintendo were the early bloomers who are now saying, motion controls, what are those? We're just making 5 million reboots of our popular franchises. And I'm all like, oh Nintendo, it's like you never left us. But now Microsoft and Sony are triumphantly waving their bloodstained underpants. Let me make my position clear. Gaming should be about games, not about controllers. Controllers as they stand are a perfectly adequate conduit for connecting man to machine by way of thumbs. It doesn't matter if A Tale of Two Cities is printed on the side of a horse, or if every other word is in Greek. What matters is that Sidney Carton sacrifices himself for Charles Darnay at the end, spoiler alert. Delude yourself all you like with videos of happy families and pastel-coloured shirts spending quality time with bouncy castle simulators, but in the long term, people want to play games the same way they want to read books or watch TV. Slouched on the settee with a big bag of Maltesers. How on earth do you think forcing them to do a sit-up every now and again is going to revolutionise entertainment? entertainment. So anyway, Microsoft's Kinect thing. A combination of Kinect, kinetic, and some colossal wankers in marketing. Apparently it's like the Wii, except it reads your movements without needing a controller, so everything will be fine until a wasp gets in the room, and then your character will promptly throw all their grenades away and pummel a chair. The launch titles are an array of colourful family fun, sports, fitness, and playgroup activity centres, too forcedly cheerful to list. Games anyone can enjoy, promises the blurb. Well, what about people who want to go and see Phantom of the Opera every now and again rather than the Christmas panto every fucking night, Microsoft? What about them? People who like games about crying widowers bleeding their last on filthy basement floors, who don't want to express their inner child because they wrapped up their inner child in bin liners and tossed it off a bridge. I will grant you though, Kinectimals' box art is the most terrifying thing I've seen all year. It looks like what would happen if John Wayne Gacy worked at Disneyland. You might have realised that if any of you had souls, rather than clockwork emotion simulators that run on money. This is probably why they keep wheeling Peter Molyneux out, because he's the only person they know with actual emotions. Very strange emotions, unique to Peter Molyneux, but emotions nonetheless. So after Microsoft Kinect's butchering of the English language comes the PlayStation Move, a much more appealingly straightforward name, almost authoritative really, like an order barked by a drill sergeant. It uses a controller that's completely different to the Wiimote because it's got a big shiny bell end. In all seriousness, this is just sad. It's like a huge smelly tramp putting a spandex leotard on over his crusty trousers and trying to enter a children's athletics competition. With similarly straightforwardly named titles like The Fight and The Shoot promised, it seems like Sony are aiming for a slightly more hardcore audience. But that's even worse. Motion controls are at least somewhat attractive to the casual pastel shirt family fun time brigade, but surely actual gaming technology should be working towards controls that use smaller movements, not larger ones, to enhance immersion by minimising the separation between thought and on-screen action. I noticed Sony are re-releasing a couple of games to use the Move system, including Heavy Rain, because I remember thinking at the time its story would have made much more sense if I'd been waving my arms around like a cat in a grandfather clock, and Resident Evil 5, which has now abandoned all pretense and subtracted the black character from its box art. Speaking of re-releasing, as I mentioned earlier, Nintendo is busily tearing its way through all its intellectual property and isn't releasing a single game that can't be prefixed with the words another bloody, as in another bloody Zelda, another bloody Donkey Kong, and of course another bloody Metroid, developed by Team Ninja of Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball fame, so I look forward to seeing how they work jiggle physics into Samus Aran's power armor. And a hefty shovelful of Nintendo's back catalogue is being remade for the 3DS. A concept that is literally impossible to demonstrate in picture or video, which rather shoots the advertising potential in the foot, but who cares, it's just a gimmick. Stereoscopic 3D is a thing that's being desperately pushed by movie companies because they're trying anything to stop cinemas from becoming irrelevant in a world where everyone has a home entertainment system the size of a small retirement cottage. And it's only a matter of time before everyone collectively realises that 3D as it stands is about as immersive as sitting too close to a glove puppet of James Cameron. Call me when they've invented the 3D hologram view screens from Star Trek, or when Nintendo's entire staff commits suicide with carbon monoxide fumes. Just time to finish off with some third-party games. XCOM, which now isn't set in the near future and isn't turn-based, so it could have called itself Custard Pie Fights with Christopher Walken, and that would have been equally relevant. Star Wars: The Old Republic. Fair enough, I mean, of all the things that try to unseat WoW from the Mamorpaga throne, Star Wars is the one thing over which nerds get even weirder. Metal Gear Solid Rising. Listen to me, Hideo Kojima, you really need to face the fact that nobody likes Raiden as much as you seem to. I mean, no one can say you didn't do all you could. You made him a cyborg breakdancing ninja, and somehow he's still a little bitch, and I don't see how having him prepare fruit salad will remedy that. What would be the best word to describe this year's E3? Routine, perhaps. Certainly seemed to follow the usual central commandment, thou shalt come out of it knowing about as much about the actual gameplay of the big-name titles as thou would if thou had stuck thy head down a toilet. Of course, for the last couple of years, there's been a secondary law. Every new thing thou learnest about the Wii U will somehow make it seem even worse. What is this obsession with using consoles to interact with other people? I've met a lot of other people, and they're all twats. The most I want them joining in on my leisure time is when they're covertly spying on me masturbating. You know what it is? Japan's birth rate is down, and Nintendo must have latched onto the idea that it's all their fault for pioneering so many wonderful alternatives to sex. Your social concerns do you credits, Nintendo, but leave your conscientious fuck-couragement out of my free time. But I don't want to harp on the big three this year when it's the game trailers that matter. Without games, a console is just an elaborate living room work surface, or in Nintendo's case, some kind of Facebook alternative exclusively for meeting people you hate. So while we're on the subject, let's start with New Mario Super Brothers Wii U something. If they bolt any more extraneous words onto this title, it's going to look like fridge magnet poetry. Sometimes it seems like the new Mario etc. franchise is being run by George Lucas in that they bloody-mindedly stick to the things everyone hates for no better reason than to stick a middle finger up at the people who didn't mindlessly consume it like good little sheep. New Super Mario... I'm just going to call it Steve from now on, alright? Steve's main problem was that 4 simultaneous players bouncing off each other made gameplay an absolute cluster molest in precision platforming environments, and Steve U's solution is to add a 5th player who uses that stupid Etch-a-Sketch thing to add platforms for his undoubtedly cooler and more popular friends who are actually playing the game. So the solution to the first game's clusterfuck issue is to add another player whose job is to throw rocks at people, and besides, 5 simultaneous players? Do you think we all live in Mormon farmhouses or something? I have enough trouble convincing one friend to come over and sponge my forehead while I'm playing Guitar Hero. But let's move with no particular direction to Dishonored, Bethesda's new, thing, which just going by the trailer seems to be proposing to be a game largely about knifing people with sideburns. That's knifing people who have got sideburns, rather. The alternative would be absurd. I make a point of exposing myself to no hype or preview besides this grudging little annual rundown of 3-minute videos, and it disturbs me how little I'm left knowing about Dishonored from this little tease, except that you knife a bunch of people in the throat, and what's doubly disturbing is that alone is what's supposed to win me over. Hello, sir, care to buy our game? It's first person and it's full of knifing people in the throat, amongst a couple of other things. Well, as long as I can look them in the eye while I'm doing it, because that's what gives me a chubby. Still, at least there's actual gameplay on display, unlike in the Assassin's Creed 3 trailer, and incidentally, with that, there's a rather disturbing theme emerging of British people being brutalised. But surely this pattern won't be continued by the Tomb Raider trailer? Oh good, it wasn't, because if the voice actress playing young Lara Croft in this trailer genuinely thinks that resembles an English accent, then I will deep fry my bathroom sink and eat it with Worcestershire sauce. And to say she gets merely brutalised is like saying a steak dinner is feeling a bit under the weather. Throughout this trailer, she gets impaled, beaten up, covered in filth, almost raped, and tossed about like Barbie in the spin dryer. It's like I Spit on Your Grave combined with all the scary bits from the Indiana Jones movies. I do like the little detail where she apologises for killing a deer for food, considering that in her future life animals are going to be as safe around her as they are around myxomatosis. Maybe she's preemptively getting her karmic backlash for that, but there's something icky about all this. Yes, the Hello Boys chest like two friendly chinchillas Bigfoot bull stomper Lara Croft was over-sexualized, but this is still sexualization from the opposite, somehow even creepier side of the coin. At least that Tyrannosaurus in the first game never tried to feel her up. Right, what's next? Oh, what a delightful trailer for some kind of Lost Planet sequel. What are they calling this one? Dead Space 3? Fuck off. Hey, says Dead Space, remember when we were supposed to be a horror series? We hope you don't. I don't want this to turn into Game X looks different to Game X-1, therefore it has changed for the worse, but my problem with this is that we're fine for action. We can stick our hand down any pipe in the house and it will come out covered in warm, greasy action, but there's a niche in AAA gaming right now, a mile wide, for a new, genuinely scary horror franchise, and all we can do is strap guns and giant monsters to what few flimsy horror franchises we have left. Resident Evil, Fear, Dead Space, is like taking gruel from African children and feeding it to Oprah Winfrey. But speaking of looking different to Game X-1, Hitman Absolution, and to coin a phrase, what the crucified fuck Christ was that? Even if you take the gender politics out of it, like imagine it's a bunch of burly men in sexy nun outfits, it's so all over the place that it's even more meaningless than pre-rendered trailers usually are. What boggles my mind is the bit where 47 mournfully closes the eyes of a dead kung fu super nun. What the hell kind of tone are we trying to set here? This poor misguided girl, thinks Agent 47, if only the Catholic Church would end their sexy rocket launcher assassin training scheme. Well, I hope you enjoyed another attempt on my part to stem this painful gushing session the industry insists upon annually, and if you have, why not consider hiring my excitement-killing services? Are your kids screaming the house down in the lead-up to Disneyland? 20 minutes in my van and they'll be suddenly kicking the back of your seat all the way to Anaheim. It's a shame I don't have time here to cover every game, but in general terms, do be optimistic, but just exercise critical thought and don't get taken in. If there's no or very little gameplay in a trailer, ask yourself what don't they want to show you? The same bland garbage as always, no doubt. I mean, look at Watch Dogs. That's how you do it. 10 minutes of unedited gameplay showing core mechanics that made my balls heat up and toss restlessly in their sack like kittens to be drowned. Congratulations, Watch Dogs, for winning the inaugural Zero Punctuation Least Excruciating of E3 award. If you're gonna get pumped for that, not because you saw an eighth of a second of Master Chief wearing a new hat. Hey, who's excited for the cavalcade of cutting-edge entertainment announced at this year's E3? Cockheads, since you ask. Although it was interesting to see the paddling pool levels of strategy on display. I know everyone was talking about what a great victory it was for Sony, but in all fairness, I think Microsoft did most of the work for them. It was like Microsoft walked out onto the stage of the International Don't Fuck Up Championship and proceeded to shiv itself in the stomach 30 times while screaming, "It's for your own good! It's for your own good!" Then Sony came out and said, "I don't want to stab myself in the stomach, that shit hurts." Whereupon fucking confetti exploded from the ceiling and they're handed the sickest burn in the history of the universe trophy. It was savvy of them to spend their airtime pointing and laughing at the competition because it meant they didn't have to explain what's in it for us, the gamers, to keep supporting the console war concept, with all its anti-consumer exclusivity and insistence on flashier graphics to the continued detriment of actual gameplay. And shut up, Microsoft rapes fish! You know, I thought Microsoft would backtrack during the show, not a week later, but I guess it's hard for actual human beings to be heard among a staff largely consisting of blood-drinking lizard people from beyond the stars. Besides that, the show was one of fairly predictable movements, not least of which those made by Nintendo. They're kind of like a tarantula, except instead of urticating hares, they throw their IP at people when threatened. Same thing happened with the Wii. There are signs of stagnation, so it's down to the stables to attach fresh jump leads to the usual dead horses. New Zelda, new Mario. Oh, he can be a Catman now. Press A to curl up and lick your own testicles. You know, like Nintendo's entire fucking company strategy. I did wonder if they'd actually do another Smash Brothers, because it would have to have new characters, and Nintendo comes up with new characters with the same frequency that Vesuvius erupts. I mean, Wii Fit Trainer, that feels like a fucking April Fool's joke. It's like entering a mannequin at a Miss World competition. Alright, bad example. Surely the obvious addition would have been Bayonetta, since she's gone all Wii U exclusive on us, but I suppose her pole dancing pubic hair crotch thrusting might lead to an awkward conversation between Mario and the princess later that night. Anyway, game trailers. I must say, it's nice to see an increase in actual gameplay videos over pre-rendered trailers, which as we all know by now are about as much use in terms of information as showing us the shrink wrap they intend to put around the box. Which is good for us, but not so much for the publishers, as it tends to reveal things they might have preferred we not know about this early. Rise springs to mind. Up until I saw that video, I thought the Spunk Gargle Wee Wee problem was unique to modern shooters, but there it is, dragged along a linear progression of predetermined, barely interactive set pieces through overcrowded war scenes so noisy and chaotic they become totally meaningless, so many NPCs that any contribution you're making is negligible at best, and no context for who you are or who you're slaughtering, except that you are obviously the aggressor and considerably better equipped. The purest essence of spunk gargle wee wee sloshing about in ancient Rome like the sewer outside the brothel backed up. Now all we need is a derisive pun. Medal of Roma, Aegean warfighter, Caligula of duty, return to Castle Vulcanstein? I'll work on it. Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain: Tactical Espionage Operations was another game maligned by its own gameplay video, as well as a title longer than the queue for the toilet at the muesli tasting convention. The footage of Snake and Bake, or whatever his codename is now, trotting through a vast desert on a horse was repeatedly fast-forwarded. Why was that, MGS5? Because the bits we fast-forwarded over were boring. But presumably you can't fast-forward over them in the actual game. No. So the actual game will be boring then? Yes. Tell me, did you feel you had to pad it out because you were afraid the runtime will be half over by the time the player has finished reading the title? Metal Gear Solid has gone open world, you see, and if there was a motto for this convention, it might as well have been such and such has gone open world, as in Mirror's Edge 2 has gone open world. And much as we'd like to illustrate that fact in the debut trailer, we'd rather just waste time reminding you of how shit the combat was in the first one, and will continue to be in the second. What's that? You were hoping to see some of the free running gameplay in the free running game? Well, hope into one hand, shit into the other, and see which one fills up first, motherfucker. Speaking of open world, Dead Rising is a series about zombie horror made fun by cleverly juxtaposing it against bright colours and wacky violence. What was that? Colour? Cleverness? Fun? Not on Xbox One's watch. Stomp, stomp, stomp. Now eat this handful of gravel and paint yourself brown, and let's have a bit less of that lip. Also, you have to kill zombies with artillery strikes now, because everything that is not Call of Duty is not Call of Duty enough. The alternative motto for this E3 may have been, don't fret, next gen will be just as bland and shooty as the current one. I mean, they were showing off Destiny like it was the most exciting development since Crispy Mint M&Ms. Look at our wonderful skybox. Look at how cutting-edge lighting effects play upon an unprecedented palette of browns and greys. Look at how we squeeze you down a linear path like a stubborn turd in a hose pipe. No, wait, don't look at that. Look at the skybox again. Similar sentiments can be made about most of what else passed for new IP, like Division or that Order 1886 thing. Ooh, a Victorian setting, that's interesting. I know, right? But actually it's a steampunk setting so that we can use standard FPS weapons and never mind! Now surely there are some things you like the look of, Yahtzee. I know you like to project a curmudgeonly facade, but we know all about those hearts made of pasta shapes you sent to Valve. Maybe there were, but the point of these annual sessions is to mitigate the damage already done by the insidious hype machine. So to that end, I'm going to ruin two things I did like the look of. Sunset Overdrive may be wearing the same kind of appealing mixture of styles that Dead Rising has dropped like a hot depleted uranium potato, but the trailer was pre-rendered and it's an Xbox One exclusive, so it's both unreliable and tainted by original sin. Secondly, in a game trailer's preview for new horror IP The Evil Within, the dude selling it says that not being able to see the floor adds to the atmosphere. You what? I'm thinking back to all my favourite atmospheric games and I don't remember thinking, man, it's lucky I can see the floor or I'd be fucking terrified. You know what does help atmosphere though? Subtlety. Not decorating every room by throwing giblets at the ceiling fan. Or chasing us down a linear hallway with a chainsaw before we've even put our keys on the table by the door. Right, that'll do. Just to be safe though, I'd better go and pound an icicle into my balls. Oh, right. The author wishes it to be known that the bulk of this video was written before the Microsoft DRM backtrack, and he now thinks that games exclusive to Xbox One are no more tainted by original sin than those exclusive to other consoles. He regrets now having to fall back on less popular arguments against next-gen consoles, such as their blind insistence on empty spectacle above all else to make AAA development all the more elitist and prohibitively expensive, the systematic erasure of console gaming history one generation at a time, the flagrantly anti-consumer culture of artificial exclusivity that has created a world in which games are expected to support consoles, in which artwork exists to serve a medium on which artwork is presented, as if the words of a great novel exist to serve paper, or a great film exists to serve a piece of wall onto which it has been projected, and so on and so on and so on. Hey kids, let's see if we can think of 3 words that start with E. Here's one. Excruciating. That'll do for a start. Here's another one. Actually, I seem to be kind of fixated on the word excruciating for the moment. Oh wait, I've got one now. End. As in, end this execrable endurance event entailing eager editors endlessly entreating eminent entertainment egotists for efficacious endowments of effluence. And for a third and final E word, eggnog. There we go, 3 E's for E3. E3 2014 to be precise, or to give it its true name, the meh heard round the world. Could you expect much? It hasn't been a year since The Bone and the Piss Poor came out. If they had any really big cards to hand, they'd have played them last year while they were trying to get everyone to buy the sodding things before too many people wised up. Though having said that, I suppose if a company is willing to attempt to switch rails mere days after a course has been stated, like what happened last year, a radical change of policy and mass suicide seems that tantalizing bit more possible. Which might as well kick this off with Microsoft then. Micro, how many bits do we have to hack off the X-Bone before it can fit inside your stony hearts soft? I hear they're bringing out drivers to let the X-Bone controller work in Windows, but since it's functionally identical to the 360 controller, I don't see what they think that will achieve, except hand PC gaming a new trophy, like a Viking with a cut made from his enemy's skull. But the blanket Microsoft spent this entire event hiding under was woven from some nice, comfortable, safe exclusive exclusive games. Hey look, it's a compilation of all the Halo games, just to underline how utterly pointless a new console was. New Crackdown, because the last one was absolute bubbling tossage, so the only way is up. New Fable, where one player controls the monsters, because if we tried to program the AI ourselves, we'd probably just fuck it up. Oh, what do you want? Please don't hit me, I didn't even mention the Kinect. But we did see some more of Sunset Overdrive, complete with wisecracking protagonist, and I can't remember ever wanting a character to choke on their own upraised bell end more. But the gameplay looked alright. Look forward when it's released for PC, like Dead Rising 3 will be. I told you that would happen, Microsoft. Capcom gives out exclusives like a shilling whore. Meanwhile, there's an intolerable air of smugness about Sony's announcements, since they're the console frontrunners. Yeah, new IPs from the creators of Journey and Dark Souls ain't no biggie. Oh no, I dropped a trailer for a new Suda 5-1 game. Better bend down to pick it up. Whoops, I let everyone look at my skirt and see a remastering of Grim Fandango. Tee-hee. But beyond that, what I was seeing surprisingly little of were reasons to buy a piss poor. Plenty of exclusive betas, like Destiny and Dead Island 2, but that just means piss poor owners win the chance to have the game spoiled for them while they're at their shittiest. The Last of Us, which you can enjoy right now if you didn't immediately throw your PS3 down a flight of stairs when the new generation started, and lest we forget PlayStation Now and PlayStation TV. All the fun of the games without having to let the piss poor itself stink up your living room. But things eventually returned to formula with Uncharted 4, A Thief's End. Oh, Sony, you tease! Now you're speaking my language. Although I shouldn't hold out hope that Nathan Drake's end will go the way I'm picturing it, involving a pair of pliers, a ball gag, and a steady stream of urine. Another thing I'm seeing is that the words gameplay trailer are being thrown around kind of fast and loose these days. Assassin's Creed Unity had an alleged gameplay trailer, but it was so tightly fucking choreographed that the demonstrator might as well have been waving a fucking conductor's baton. And in this we learned the grand scheme for 4-player co-op, the innovation I was really hoping we'd get over by now. If you think gameplay that's traditionally about stealth, timing and precision is going to be improved by having 3 dangle twats running about, then you obviously haven't been hanging around with the same human beings that I'm familiar with. Another blatant abuser of the term gameplay trailer was Far Cry 4, to whom the phrase first 5 minutes of gameplay means the scripted intro sequence. Yes, isn't it marvellous what you can do with in-engine cutscenes these days, but before any actual gameplay trailers came out, the game could have been a sausage-making simulator for all we knew. Looks like they're trying to make the Far Cry 3 lightning strike twice, with the clueless white-bread hero being toyed with by colourful charismatic villain again, so let's hope they remember to have the villain hang around for the whole game this time. Rise of the Tomb Raider was also announced, the exciting story of how a young Lara Croft was first forged in the fires of adventure. Hang on a minute, wasn't that what the previous Tomb Raider was about? I guess they're gonna stretch this shit like her training bra. Lara Croft is like an indecisive school leaver. Shut up, Dad, I'll decide what I want to do with my life after one more gap year of unrelenting horror and violence. Now, a large segment of EA's presentation could be summarised with, here's the latest iterations of things you've already got, $60 please. Buy FIFA 15, sports fans, we added a new crease to David Beckham's face. We've also added more emotions to The Sims 4. Look at the gurning face of my little doll man. Imagine yourselves wearing the same face as you fork out for what is essentially The Sims 3 again. Better buy all that DLC a second time as well. Pants down, fist up, pound, pound, pound. Speaking of which, Battlefield Hardline. It's making a shift from regular warfare to balls-out urban warfare between cops and crims, but the trailer I saw mainly consisted of burly white heroes roughing up black guys. So, you know, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And finally, Nintendo, whose presence once again is like briefly opening the door to your granddad's room and catching a glimpse of him still lost in his own little world, gently masturbating. It's got Smash Brothers for the general company-wide masturbation, but now it's got Hyrule Warriors, name not final, for a more fine-tuned masturbation of the Zelda franchise specifically. Just in time for the inevitable Wii U Zelda game, which I won't dwell on because we saw so little of it, although that doesn't seem to have stopped everyone else from jizzing every pair of pants they own. Also Mario Maker, aka Do You Know How to Inject Life into Mario at this point, because bug it if we do. And a new IP, Splatoon, because I guess they needed at least one new thing they could add to Smash Brothers. Will it help the Wii U? Who knows? Not me. Who cares? Ditto mark. I'm completely out of what energy I had for E3. It was even less enticing than last year, and last year made my bollocks roll up like a Venetian blind. So if you don't mind, I think I'm just going to slide to the floor and hope to get smothered to death by the Roomba. It's that magical time of year when marketing professionals throughout the games industry load up their shotguns and shoot a massive bleeding fake smile onto their faces to misrepresent a whole load of wank until we want to buy it and then tell us we can't have it until Q4 next year. Yes, the E3 hype train has pulled into the station for another year to unload a few tons of liquid shit onto the platform and then speed off cackling into the night. But as I write this introduction before the first press conference begins, I don't mind admitting to a quiet hope that things may be a little different this year. Perhaps they might even announce some things that haven't already been leaked. Also, VR tech may finally be making its move. The claim that motion controls would enhance immersion was always about as believable as the claim that a sledgehammer can enhance a Fabergé egg, but I genuinely believe that VR represents the way forward for immersive gaming. If they can iron out that whole playing it for more than an hour makes my stomach want to crawl up my throat and file divorce proceedings against my inner ear problem. But of course, Oculus already did its pre-E3 announcement that it was jumping into bed with Microsoft. Yowza, could have broken that more gently, Oculus. You don't come out to your parents in a Christmas card. An Xbox One controller will ship with it like a rich snot buying his way into the popular kids club, and you can stream Xbox One games onto it. There was a video of someone playing a third-person game on a screen in a virtual living room, which I'm guessing is their entry for the Piers Morgan for President Total Pointlessness Award. And also, there's going to be a special two-handed controller that incorporates... motion... Oh, God, no! that incorporates motion sensor tech. No, we were so close! We were almost free! Why must we forever carry our failures around with us like a scrotum full of horseshoes? Oh, you can pick up a virtual gun with your actual hand and fire it, because that's what I want added to the process of shooting an enemy, isn't it? My noodly wrist groping for something that isn't there like a castrated wanker. Hey, Captain Scott, how about we make sure we can actually get to the South Pole before we start making plans to erect the Statue of Liberty there? Bethesda's entire press conference was apparently being run by Captain Obvious. In it, we learned that Doom is gory, and that Fallout 4, which was already available for pre-order to people with some kind of pathological hatred of their own money, is a Fallout game. But if there's been too much action, narrative, and exploration in Fallout games for your tastes, and you'd rather have spent your time messing around with the Sims building editor, then Fallout 4's got you covered. For everyone else, Fallout 4 talks up the illusory holy grail of total freedom, but a game where the player can do anything is a game that focuses on nothing. Also, there was Dishonored 2, whoops, Butterfingers dropped my honor again, but perhaps it would be quicker to skip pre-rendered trailers as they tell us nothing except, hey, this is a thing that may someday exist, and we will literally promise anything if it makes one person in the audience go woo. Of course, the line between pre-rendered and gameplay trailers grew rather thin during the Microsoft show, awkward segue, where Rise of the Tomb Raider, Halo 5 and a new Gears of War joined forces to become the Back to Formula gang. You think you've been dragged along a linear sequence of set pieces before, but you've never been dragged along a linear sequence of set pieces like this, except you have, in all the other games with the same name as us, but shut up and look at the skyboxes. The shocking Microsoft announcement was that backwards compatibility is coming to the Xbox One. Before we could even start undoing our trousers, however, the great big asterisk came like a shuriken to the eye socket. It's just for a limited range of 360 games. It's like pirates kidnapped our wife and now expect a round of applause because they brought her back after 2 years and only cut off most of her arms and legs. Let's skip ahead a bit to the recipient of Microsoft's wildest fantasy hate fucks, Sony, and nuzzle my hairy crevices if they didn't actually announce The Last Guardian again. The logical successor to its two predecessors in that it looks just like Ico, except with a Colossus instead of the flaky bitch. Not out till next year though. They must be programming this game by carving ones and zeros into stone tablets. Otherwise, if Microsoft had the Back to Formula gang, Sony's theme was get in that nostalgic comfort zone and start digging, bitch. Rest assured, Uncharted 4 looks exactly the same as all the other ones. Here's a remake of Final Fantasy VII we'll tell you fuck all about, because you already busted a nut before we reached the fourth syllable of the title, didn't you? And last but not least, Shenmue 3's Kickstarter. That's fucking weak. That's about 10 levels below a pre-rendered trailer. Maybe next year you could just have someone come on and go, I'm thrilled to announce that I'm now going to stand here and imagine a game in my head. Give us cash. Right, what else? We knew about Assassin's Creed Syndicate, of course, but even if we didn't, it hardly seems worth mentioning. It's like announcing that the tide will continue to go in and out. I don't see much to indicate that Syndicate is adding much to the formula, but we do know that its idea of a relatable protagonist is someone who beats people up until they join his street gang, leads them into a big fight, then fucks off. Maybe he's auditioning for the all-hunky blokes production of A Clockwork Orange. Later we poked our head around Old Man Nintendo's door for a bit, and I'm thinking the Nintendo 3DS should be renamed the Nintendo Psych. Hey, we're totally announcing a new Zelda, a new Mario, and a new Metroid Prime. Oh, they're all on the 3DS. Psych! I say Metroid Prime. There's no sign of Samus Aran, and it looks like an N64 threw up on a Star Wars prequel. This is like when your nan buys your Christmas presents. This was what you wanted, isn't it, dear? Almost, Nan. I actually wanted you to jam it between your crusty folds and hammer it home with a wire brush. Star Fox was about as good as it got, and that looked like a Star Wars prequel threw up on an N64. Just a little bit of time left now for some quickfire snarks. Hitman. Square Enix must be confident in it because they're doing the reboot with the same name thing, and they won't be able to play that card again for at least 9 minutes. Mass Effect Andromeda, aka Mass Effect Escape from the Corner We Wrote Ourselves Into. Nice picture postcard landscapes. I look forward to next year's teaser when you think of something to put in them. Horizon Zero Dawn. Nope, I have no earthly clue what that title means. I suspect you came up with it by throwing a set of refrigerator poetry magnets at the side of a speeding car. Here is a joke that I just made up. What's the difference between E3 and a pen full of excited pigs fighting over the stinking corpse of a sheep? Microphones! In all seriousness though, while I must again dutifully walk up to the pig pen and ready my castrating shears, it's looking like most of the pigs already curled up and nibbled their own balls off. There was something very half-hearted about the show this year. It's almost like publishers have realised that they could make all their announcements on the back of a used envelope at midnight on Remembrance Sunday, and the excitable little spurt burglars of the internet will still start ejaculating out of their eyeballs. Nintendo stopped physically showing up to the annual swimsuit contest years ago, preferring to send pre-recorded videos like an ISIS execution squad, and this year they could barely summon the effort to do that, with just a live stream that very conspicuously didn't mention the upcoming NX console, but made it about the games, or in real terms, game. Yes, stem thy frothing nostrils, ye predictable fanboy sods. The Wii U's finally getting that fucking Zelda game you want so much, although it is going to have to share it with the NX, which at this point could be anything from an upgraded Wii U to a dancing bear in a fez. Sony also absentmindedly failed to bring up the rumoured PlayStation 4.5, and if I were them I'd have at least given it a fancy code name like Project Buttery Thighs, just so we could call it something less tedious. Otherwise, a few updates on things we already knew about, PlayStation VR, a real no-crossed-finger backsies release date for Last Guardian, which will now have to come free with a clone of Jesus to live up to the wait, and the corpse of Silent Hills has emitted a couple of unexpected farts. Kojima Productions announced something called Death Stranding, with the emphasis on thing, let's charitably call it a proof of concept, which proves very little, except that Kojima shouldn't watch so many music videos. And then there's Resident Evil 7, which has boldly leapt into Silent Hills' smoking shoes with a new and yet hauntingly familiar playable teaser in a first-person spooky house. A style shift worked wonders for Resident Evil 4, but this is a shift so radical that even calling it Resident Evil borders on duplicitous, except for the fact that the game is now literally about an evil residence. Still, what else could they do? Follow on from Resident Evil 6? That'd be like trying to serve dessert after the main course consisted of fillet of asbestos in dog shit. Of the big lads in the playground, Microsoft was the only one still turning in its schoolwork, but with pimping the X-Bone's cellulite-covered ass officially written off as a lost cause, we're being introduced to two younger, hotter sisters, the slimline 1S, where the S presumably stands for Stick It Up Your Bum, and a slightly upgraded model called Project Scorpio. If you're going with the Zodiac names, Microsoft, then personally I would have gone with Cancer. What's with all these announcements for not quite next generation updated consoles? Is the big idea to turn this into the smartphone industry, where we buy a new one every 2 years because they slightly upped the resolution and smoothed another corner off? I'm not going to do that, assholes, because I don't keep my smartphone in a nest of cables under the TV that I'm loath to venture into without a native guide into Wig's provisions. On the other hand, Microsoft have also declared that Xbone games will be playable through Windows 10, and the console may even get mouse and keyboard support, which indicates that Microsoft's plan may be to become a developer of gaming PCs so gradually that nobody notices. Getting back to the subject of VR, I still think it's a way forward, but the push towards it is starting to remind me of the push towards motion controls, and that makes me uneasy, like my preferred political candidate got endorsed by Hitler. I do wish they'd stop trying to pair VR with motion controls, because that path never ends. You can buy hand puppet controllers and a treadmill and force feedback vests until your living room has more wires running through it than a foreign embassy in Moscow, and then you'll realise you can't smell the in-game gore, so you hire beautiful Filipino boys to slaughter chickens under your nose, and it still won't be as immersive as a standard button controller that you barely have to think about. And I don't think there's any reason the game should be exclusive to VR, because I'm sure there are plenty of people who'd want to play it but don't want to take a break every 2 hours for a nice cleansing puke. Anyway, that Star Trek Bridge Operations game intrigued me, in a slightly shameful dad's train set sort of way, but of all the generations of Star Trek we could pretend to be in, we're stuck with Reboot Trek. That's like inviting the Spice Girls to an orgy and only Sporty Spice shows up. Speaking of dad games, what's with God of War turning into The Last of Us? Kratos hefting his massive new beard around, teaching his moist son how to hunt. All I could think about as I watched him slowly trudge through pretty environments having Sony-branded character-building moments and being a bad dad was the start of the original God of War, in which Kratos was in a room full of monsters, yelled, "Monsters are a thing that I kill," and that was it, straight into gameplay to start bouncing them around like kittens in a candy floss machine. These first 5 minutes of gameplay videos don't count for a whole lot if those 5 minutes are wholly unrepresentative of the rest of the game. I mean, we all know damn well that kid's not going to survive past the second act, because there wouldn't be a God of War game if Kratos wasn't using deicide as impromptu bereavement counselling. Right, what else? Did someone trip over the wires that were making Sony Tron 3000 remember that zombies are completely overdone? Because that's the only explanation I can think of for Days Gone, whose principal selling point seems to be it is a zombie sandbox, apparently unaware that Dead Rising 4 and State of Decay 2 were doing shots in the next room. Christ, it's not even the first zombie sandbox with the word day in the fucking title. Relatedly, Ubisoft continues to scream the word sandbox every time someone enters the room, like a malfunctioning Furby, despite Assassin's Creed having been let off the milking machine for a quick stag around the meadow. Watch Dogs is getting a sequel based on the principle that shit is a good fertilizer, and I see they've abandoned the boring hero strategy for the blisteringly irritating hero, who's watched too many Johnny Lee Miller films approach. You know what? E3 2016 was a show of names. Lots of familiar names, some with incremental numbers on the end, some without. And I know that's pretty much the case every year, but there was an unusual spike in familiar names appearing over totally unfamiliar things. Resident Evil has never been Hoarders meets the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Prey was a lot of things, most of them retarded, but none of them are evident in what is now being referred to as Prey. And since Doom, Bethesda clearly feel they're onto a good thing, wiring up their milking machines to old id properties, but Quake Champions seems to have bugger all to do with the original Quake, and bugger lots to do with Overwatch being more successful than the MMR vaccine. If they keep this up, then soon we'll enter a world where names are totally fucking meaningless, which will come as a relief to my friend, Patrick Childmolester. So here was the conundrum I found myself in, listener. E3 has come around again, and without my usual roundup of the show, it may inflict that most insidious of modern diseases, optimism. But at the same time, I kind of want to review Friday the 13th, the game, which I've been weirdly absorbed by lately, and I don't want to put it off another week, so what do I talk about? This nihilistic horror experience in which a lumbering, faceless idiot endeavours to bleed numerous young people dry, or Friday the 13th, the game? That's when I realised the answer was staring me in the face. All I have to do is review E3 using analogies to Friday the 13th, the game. So with that in mind, let's run down yet another handful of shows in which highly scrubbed people with earpieces and well-trained speaking voices attempt to get as excited about games as hackneyed and unoriginal as Friday the 13th, the game's map variety. What map shall we choose for the next round? The campsite on the lake, the other campsite on the lake, or if we feel like a change, the campsite on the lake but it's on the other side of the lake? In hardware news, Microsoft have updated Project Scorpio with a somehow even worse name, the Xbox One X. There's already 2 X's in Xbox, you dozy gits. This name is starting to look like a defaced game of tic-tac-toe, and I feel bringing it out alongside the Xbox One S is practically inviting the confused elderly relative on Christmas morning nightmare scenario, which never fails to be as disappointing as Friday the 13th, the game's lack of an option to bind push-to-talk to one of the controller buttons. Anyway, the Xbox XXXX, an essential purchase for people who like buying all new hardware every fucking year and lack the level-headed common sense of a demolition derby contestant, has a bunch of numbers attached that are apparently larger than the numbers of other consoles, but who the fuck cares? It's the games that count. The only teased Xbox exclusive that gave me any kind of tickle squirt was Crackdown 3, and even that rang alarm bells because Terry Crews was in it, and celebrities just scream distraction tactic. It's as distracting as the tendency of certain public Jason players to get into character by narrating all their actions in a furious comedy bellow. I'd turn voice chat off, but then I wouldn't be able to hear my fellow teammates calling me a cunt for not having a microphone set up. What it's crying out for is some kind of emote system, like maybe I could make an icon flash over my head indicating things like, yes, I have some car keys, or no, I am not available for sexual role-playing. Just like the Sony presentation was crying out for some games we didn't already fucking know about. Yeah, new Spider-Man game, trying too hard to be a Batman Arkham game yet a fucking again. There's got so many QuickTime events, it's like watching a Transformers movie while programming a microwave. Yeah, new David Cage game about emotionless robots with only vague ideas on how to act human. Fuck, great idea, David Cage, play to your strengths. Yeah, new God of War, which by the looks of it is 10% actual gameplay and then more cinematic set pieces than Friday the 13th has hilarious physics fuck-ups that make ragdolls bounce out of kill animations like they're just really excited to be getting a fresh start on their new life as a corpse. Old man Nintendo had a better showing, although that Mario vs. Rabbids game makes me wonder if Ubisoft is trying to steal their pension checks. Fair play to them, Mario Odyssey needed a new angle and it found one. They've done Mario becomes a raccoon, they've done Mario becomes a cat, but they've never done Mario becomes a tunneling brain parasite. What is it about Mario Odyssey that screams Sonic 2006 at me? Must be the cartoon characters interacting with realistically proportioned humans, which is always faintly sinister, like Christopher Lloyd's scenes in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. But fuck all that, because splice my urethra, Nintendo were working on a game entitled Metroid Prime 4. That's literally all we know, the title. This is where one of those shit game journalists would say, let's stay optimistic. But this is Nintendo we're talking about. They've shown a bigger grudge against Metroid fans than I have against playing as Jasons with a fast swim ability when you need to swim about as often as a cat made of soluble aspirin. So let's talk third party. Oh boy, another bloody open world action game featuring wilderness exploration and where the player can decide what approach to take, meaning they will choose stealth followed by direct assault after the stealth fucks up. And in the spirit of player choice, you may now choose what game I'm talking about. Far Cry 5, Days Gone, or Anthem. They really have given up on making gameplay videos that don't seem totally scripted. The people they got to voice the open quotes players of the Anthem open quotes gameplay video sounded like they were trying to unwind after a hard day appearing in David Cage games. And of course there's Assassin's Creed, emerging from its hiatus, waving its arms and yelling, we figured out where our incredibly cluttered unfocused gameplay design was going wrong. What people really want is incredibly cluttered unfocused gameplay design with the minimap taken off. Pre-order now for an exclusive golden bow with a fucking knob on the end or something, whatever. The annual E3 bet you thought we were hoping you'd forgotten about this award this year goes to Beyond Good and Evil 2. Although sadly all they had was a pre-rendered trailer which as we know only tells us 3 things, Jack, fucking and shit. Speaking of which, what's with all the fucking profanity? It's funny animal people pulling merry pranks on cartoonish fist-shaking villains in an upbeat sci-fi universe. Seems ideal, family-friendly fare, but everyone's effing like a sailor who showed up last for the queue outside your mum's house. It makes as much sense as Friday the 13th stamina mechanics. Standing under light makes stamina recover faster. What, is Jason mad at us for drinking all his chlorophyll? Star Wars Battlefront 2 is pulling what's known as the Titanfall gambit, make full-price multiplayer-only game, add single-player campaign to sequel, then expect praise for it, like a player who wastes a shotgun shell on Jason in the first 5 minutes when there's nothing to distract him from. A Way Out is a narrative game that's co-op only. Oh, you blighted industry with the long-term memory problems of a combat-focused player character attempting to repair the car. Linear narrative focus and multiplayer have never worked together. You can't get immersed in a story's universe when there's a human next to you acting as constant reminder of the real world. And that title is asking for trouble from snarky critics. A Way Out, I certainly wanted one. In conclusion, Friday the 13th the game is like most one versus group multiplayer games in that it's basically hide and seek with extra steps, but the core rules of it create enough effective suspense to draw me in despite its lack of polish and slight problem with random players acting like twats. Meanwhile, E3 has all the polish in the world and is a fucking twat safari. So that's the final comparison. Jason sucks down damage compilation hacks up kids, E3 damages kids and sucks off hacks. So E3 rolls around once more to insolently demand our attention like a street corner preacher with his knob out, so the developers can demonstrate to the world that they are in vague occasional contact with someone who can cut a half-decent trailer together, and for this reason alone we should fork out now for their overpriced grindy tat that we can't even play yet. Gathering once again in single file to have a good old splurge to camera are the usual suspects: EA, Bethesda, Ubisoft, Sony, Nintendo, and what was your name again? Microsoft. Oh yes, weren't you the guys who made that funny paperclip thing? Ostensibly, this year's conference was from the 12th to the 14th of June, but as seems to be increasingly common, most of the big lads did their shows beforehand. I guess if they tried to keep it in their pants a moment longer, they'd have started spooging out their nostrils. Interestingly, it was almost all games this year. None of the big boys were pushing hardware. Even Nintendo didn't bring out that Labo thing much. Not that I'm that bothered, because I'm a 35-year-old man and don't plan to spend a week putting together little origami pianos before making a sweary internet video about my paper cuts. EA started spooging first, a full 3 days early, with some more Anthem footage to make my eyes glaze over faster and more efficiently than ever. Still looks like they mulched together Mass Effect, Destiny, Titanfall and Horizon Zero Dawn and spread it over a garage floor with an uninteresting broom. Did you see that pulse-pounding combat in action? Can't wait to point at an enemy, hold down the fire button and stand there picking at my itchy bum crack until the damage indicator stopped coming out. Then Bethesda stepped up and said, "Who likes pre-rendered teasers that tell you fuck all?" Nobody. Well, nobody's gonna like this then. And we proceeded to learn precisely fuck all about Elder Scrolls 6, Starfield, Wolfenstein Youngblood and Doom Eternal. We did get to see an only slightly less uninformative, painfully scripted Rage 2 video that I will only call gameplay footage because suffocating yawnfest takes slightly longer to type. So someone at Bethesda must have said, "We're making sequels to scrotum pulverizingly good Doom and teabag squeezingly forgettable Rage. Which one would people most want to hear about?" Well, I think that should be obvious. Haha, yes, I suppose it is. Oh fuck, now I'll look stupid if I ask again. We also very loudly and conspicuously didn't learn much about Fallout 76, except that it's online focused, so we can reliably infer the rest from what we know is already popular and easy to rip off. So, open world, survival, crafting, you know the drill, get ready to punch trees. But only now can you punch trees while wearing sporty Fallout brand blue. So roll over and yap like little dogs at supper time, you uncritical, butthole-relishing, close relative molesters. My goodness, Microsoft's conference showcased a lot of games. Cyberpunk 2077, Just Cause 4, Metro Exodus, Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Wow, are those all Xbox exclusives, Microsoft? No, none of those are. But you can play them on Xbox? Yes, Microsoft, we could, hypothetically, do that. Shadow of the Tomb Raider is apparently the game where we see Lara Croft become the Tomb Raider. Fuck you, Square Enix, that's what you said the last 2 times. She's been becoming the Tomb Raider for 5 fucking years. When is this whimpering cunt gonna get out of training bras? So what exclusives have Microsoft got? Well, there's Halo Infinite, which already isn't even the most interesting FPS sequel about a green Lego astronaut with a generic subtitle that means never ending. In contrast, Sony's show went for a quality over quantity approach with in-depth endoscopic looks up a small handful of first-party anuses. And forgive me if it seems like Sony are putting a lot of love eggs in the same basket, or asshole. I mean, first there's Ghost of Tsushima, a game about stealthing around an apocalyptic landscape killing thugs. Then there's Last of Us 2, a game about stealthing around an apocalyptic landscape killing thugs and being a lesbian. And then there's Death Stranding, a game about... What the fuck are you about, Death Stranding? Well, there was something stealth-like going on in an apocalyptic landscape, so I'm adding it to the pile. The more I see of Spider-Man, the less confidence I have in it. And I wasn't exactly foaming at the urethra in the first place, because every Spider-Man game they've made in years makes the same 3 goddamn mistakes. 1, terrible dialogue. 2, trying too hard to be like a Batman Arkham game. And 3, not being Spider-Man 2 on the GameCube. And the new trailer terrible dialogues its way through a sequence that is literally Batman Arkham Asylum, except with Spider-Man's shitty villains. And it blatantly isn't Spider-Man 2, because Spider-Man 2 was a game, not a bunch of overblown scripted action sequences strung together like a line of colourful flags coming out of Stan Lee's dried up old man tits. Right, who else? Neo 2 got announced, which was unfortunate timing because From Software announced their own feudal Japan Dark Souls game, namely Shadows Die Twice, and instantly removed whatever reason Neo had to exist. Oh, and also Nintendo announced a new Smash sorry, halfway through saying the title I suddenly stopped caring. I suppose I could mention Ubisoft, but that feels like mentioning the colour of the wallpaper. They're always hanging about in the background, putting out their samey sandboxes with the clockwork regularity of an explosively copious period. New Assassin's Creed right on cue, set in ancient Greece, which makes sense because the ancient Greeks were really into buggery. But what made me choke on my sherbet was when the bloke narrating the gameplay video said, "For the first time you will be able to choose between a male and female hero." You what? Am I on crazy pills? Assassin's Creed Syndicate did that! What is the fucking point of doing progressive and innovative things if you're just gonna pretend they didn't happen 2 games later and try to score innovation points a second time? It's not progressive if you're progressing to the place where we already fucking are, genius! I'm genuinely mad about this. I've got no more room to snark about Beyond Good and Evil 2 now, and it's Assassin's Creed Odyssey's fault. You know why I still do these rundowns every year. It's because gamers as consumers have conceded too much fucking ground, and what counts as acceptable standard business practice inches more and more toward Fort Bullshit Tennessee every year. 20 years ago, the relationship was, play 1/3 of our game for free, as much as you like, and then consider paying this unworthy mortal 20 insignificant dollars for the rest, your grace. And somehow that's turned into, pay in full now, stinking plebs, because we showed you a logo. You can't have it for 6 months, and then you have to pay another $10 for the special helmet with a bell end on the front, so everyone knows what a cockhead you are. The pushback against loot boxes was a good start, but how about this? Let's all stop pre-ordering stuff. Just for a year, 6 months maybe, trial period. If you're tempted, ask yourself, can I envision a scenario in which my decision to purchase this game might ultimately hinge on whether or not I can play it while wearing a special pre-order cock helmet? At least consider it, so that next year I'm not saying, hey guys, how about we all stop ticking the box that says Sony have the exclusive ownership rights to our blood? This was my first time attending an E3 in person, and as I sat down in the audience of the Microsoft presser, I realised how much you miss watching these things online, as the camera swept across the rows of hooting paid fanboys in the front rows and very deliberately avoided tracking over the bored-looking media types that filled the other 2/3 of the room, along with the scent of cheap cigarettes. Anyway, the big news is that the new Xbox, Project Scarlet isn't coming out till last quarter 2020, so back to sleep everyone, until the next E3 when they'll really bring the system sellers out and presumably come up with an even worse name for the fucking thing. Until then, all we have is that Halo Infinite is about Master Chief being found lost in space yet a fucking again. They really need to put one of those GPS key finders on that green cunt, and Gears of War 5 will involve chest-high walls and dudes with necks twice as thick as the tops of their heads. Scant mention of the story campaign, probably because it'll be the same boring shit as always, but I did get a chance to play the new Escape multiplayer mode, enough to establish that it's just Left 4 Dead with Gears of War combat, set in a map so boring and labyrinthine I was astonished to learn it wasn't randomly generated. So what would you call it, Gear 4 Dead or Left of War? Or does that sound too much like you're giving directions? As for streaming your games to your device wherever you are, who the fuck carries an Xbox controller everywhere they go, besides boomerang enthusiasts with very poor eyesight? What's more important is all these game subscription services, your Xbox Game Pass and your Uplay Plus, which I don't mind that much because in this age of Netflix, the financial model for video games has to change at some point from its current state, the financial model of an abattoir built on the edge of a cliff. But in the end, it's only the games that count, and the Xbox briefing broke new records for sheer number of announced games whose titles I almost immediately forgot. I think there was an indie game with pastel colours and sad piano music at one point, and I think there was something involving guns and the colour magenta. Oh, hang on, I don't have to rely upon half-remembered online clips this year, because I actually played some of the thing I'm very naughtily pretending to forget was called Bleeding Edge. And I hereby declare that it's making a heroic effort to not immediately look like a copy of Overwatch. Yes, it's a team-based competitive hero shooter, but this one's focused on melee combat. Oh, it's all melee. No, some characters are ranged. So, like Overwatch then. Moving on. Wait, we gave everyone a surfboard. I already said moving on, Bleeding Edge. Funny, isn't it, how whenever a game talks about being over-the-top or tongue-in-cheek, that always seems to mean the same thing these days, that it's going to look like an irresponsibly violent version of Jet Set Radio, probably cel-shaded, every character is introduced with a freeze-frame profile and dresses like a tank girl cosplayer with colour blindness, and a lot of things will be magenta. Oh yeah, and there'll be a panda for some reason. That was the case with Contra Rogue Core, which started with a crazy cutscene culminating in our main dude riding a missile into the level, spraying bullets like a giant incontinent doomcock, only for the gameplay to start and everything screeched to a halt as I moved sluggishly around the isometric level, spitting bullets from a gun that overheated faster than a former Trump associate in a police interview room, and took about as long to cool down as an impeachment proceeding. But let's get on to some of the bigger stuff, like for example the giant dribbling cock that Square Enix tripped and broke its nose on, the one with Avengers written along the side. With Avengers Endgame and the very distinct appearances of the main actors still fresh in public memory, wheeling out a game starring their stunt doubles left everyone a bit nonplussed at best. Oh come on yards, the cost of the likeness rights for these people could have paid for 4 more years of mysteriously silent Final Fantasy VII development. Oh fair enough, Square Enix, just show us how the Avengers game plays then. No. Between that being a blatant grab for some of the sweet cash that drools constantly from Marvel's cornucopic vagina, and everything else they had being one remade or re-released pretty anime sword boy game after another, the motto of Square Enix this year was, isn't not having to come up with ideas great? Now then, my Bethesda booth visit was a rather strange adventure. I had 1 hour to see Wolfenstein Youngblood and Doom Eternal, and after 45 minutes of Wolfenstein's long boring cutscenes, irritating bullet sponge combat, and further evidence for the truth of the old saying, crowbar in co-op enhances a previously single-player narrative-focused experience the way a handful of broken glass enhances cosmetic dentistry, our time was running a bit tight. Oh well, I suppose I could switch you to Doom early. Wolfenstein did still have a whole other level to bore you to death with, but if you insist. So I switched to Doom, and Doom proceeded to kick whatever shredded remnants of arse remained unkicked from the last game. So altogether, the Bethesda hour was like opening a present that has been wrapped in 10 layers of moist bog roll. Doom Eternal was how you fucking do an E3 demo. Hands-on, quick tutorial, straight into the primary loop to let it speak for itself in the voice of a very handsome man with a thick but somehow reassuring smell clinging to his body hair. Not like all those fucking hands-off demos. I still have no fucking fucking clue if Dying Light 2 and Cyberpunk 2077 will still look impressive when being played by someone who isn't following the same rigidly choreographed script they've gone through 30 times today, who might inconveniently look in the wrong direction when something impressive happens or want to operate on an actual fucking learning curve. Hey, maybe Cyberpunk could have had the money to get the game finished a little quicker if they'd just paid Keanu Reeves to come onto the Xbox conference and say 9 words instead of 10. Wait a minute, everyone. Yahtzee thought Doom Eternal looked good. Fuck, going to E3 has given him hype disease. Get him in quarantine before the infection spreads and he starts using the phrase, "it could be interesting." Fine, you want cynicism? Pokemon Sword and Shield. Run out of colours and gemstones and chromosomes, it's down to weapons, soon household objects, and perhaps one day we'll get to live the dream of playing Pokemon Cock and Balls, but I digress. The full 3D look really isn't suiting Pokemon. Everything looks so small in a huge empty world, and the animations and in-faces all come across as kind of stiff and awkward, like they've all had to hold a pose for just a little bit too long before the photo was taken. And as for a Zelda Breath of the Wild sequel, so much for the bold spirit of back-to-basics innovation that drove the first one, now it's straight back to endlessly stirring the fucking pot for Nintendo. Hence Link's Awakening being copy-pasted as a fucking Happy Meal toy, I suppose. Mind you, direct sequels to Zelda games doing their own thing now the tiresome save Princess from Ganon formalities are out of the way have historically been the breeding ground for some of the really good Zeldas like Link's Awakening or Majora's Mask, so actually a Breath of the Wild sequel could be interesting. Alright, lock it down, containment breach!